If you enjoy listening to adventure stories, then you should visit thedihedral.com. You will find stories from other members of the community and read about climbing, life, and the outdoors. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Let's connect and climb on!
Climb on! Roll!
Welcome to another episode of the Dihedral podcast. This is Gaia, along with Carrot once again.
Hi, everybody.
Today we have the opportunity to be speaking to a wonderful woman who has revolutionized climbing photography and keeps just challenging the status quo and the gender roles and stereotypes that are in a way inside of the discipline. If you look throughout her Instagram, it's so cool because she has very bright, colorful pictures of a different range of people, women from different color, race, age. It's just wonderful and very inclusive. So if you might already know who I'm talking about, but if not, her name's Irene, or you might know her as Ladylockoff. Thank you so much for joining us today, Irene.
Hi guys, how are you?
Fine, thank you.
Very good to have you on the show today.
Okay, just to start, we have to ask this question, just get it out. We really want to know, for you, what came first in your experience, climbing or photography, or they come together?
For me, climbing definitely came first. I always describe my photography as something that was like an extension of climbing to start. So if you want the long story, I moved to Las Vegas about 7 years ago. And when I moved here, I was going through old memories kind of on Facebook to put up pictures since, I knew very few people here. And when you move far away from your community, pictures are a great way to feel like that community is still with you. And so I was looking through pictures. I realized I only had pictures of my friend Valerie and myself because she forced me to take a selfie every time we did something. And I absolutely rolled my eyes and I hated it. But in that moment, I realized that those were the only pictures of my life that I had that I absolutely loved, and I could remember everything that we had done because we had a photo memory of it. So for me, photos became memories. And when I started climbing, I wanted to remember this incredible new thing that I was doing. And I kind of wanted to freak out my dad on Facebook. And so I decided to start taking photos of myself and taking those memories so I could remember this super new thing that I was doing that I felt connected to. So I started climbing first, and then the photos came after that. And something that really excelled that process was I was at the company that I was working for had a holiday party, and I won a little Sony lens, which is before camera phones were good. They made these cameras that worked with your phone to it was a better camera, but all the guts were in your phone. And so I got one of those, and it had a self-timer. And so that kind of ramped up my photography taking when I could just self-timer myself and had a better quality than my phone to start taking photos. And I just took off with that zoom lens and did just a lot of different things with it. I know the kind of most well-known photo is one that I have of myself of me through a carabiner. It's my profile picture, and that was actually taken with that camera, and I think I learned a lot. It's a selfie. It's a timer photo. I just decided to just tape it to my rope because
that's what I was gonna ask. How did you frame it? Because it looks amazing.
No, I just had it on a self timer, and I just started jumaring up and down and was hoping for the best, and the best was incredible, and it really showed you you don't have to have great gear to be able to do something incredible. People are oh, good cameras. I was that was taken with a crap camera, and it was really good. So, I think it was a good lesson that taught me a few things along the way.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you moved to Las Vegas. Is that what I heard right? And so was your first climbing experience out in Red Rocks, or did you start with a gym, and who brought you into the game? How did that all start?
So I actually grew up in a rock climbing town. I grew up in New Paltz, New York, right outside the Gunks. But I was not really an outdoor child, so I had never actually climbed. I think I had a friend's grandmother pay for us once to go rock climbing for like a guide where you just like top rope and you're 12 and you have no muscle strength because you spend all day reading. And that was kind of like my very first experience, if you want to put it that way. But in Las Vegas, you know, when you move to a new place, it was a really nice start for me because I felt like, you know, it's kind of like, it's scary, but it was a fresh start for me. I was really getting bogged down in the city of Boston. And to be honest, like, I didn't particularly like who I was. I don't think I was very good to the people around me. And like, I wasn't very social and I was really awkward. And so when I moved to Las Vegas, I was like, okay, well, you know, I don't pretty much know nobody here. And I guess it's time for me to make some friends, which makes you just more open to do new things. And honestly, I was just trying to find a new gym to go to. I like went to the YMCA in Boston and I just wanted fitness classes. And I was like, oh, you know, vaguely, I guess I've been interested in rock climbing. Sure. And I went to a meetup group at a local gym and I was incredibly scared, but I was like, okay, 2 hours of my life, I'm going to go try something new. I need to be okay with being bad at something and like not expressing that in a bad way where some people socially don't want to be around you. I was like, I'm just gonna try something new. I'm gonna do my best. I'll probably be bad at it, but it's like, okay, I'm gonna try it. And so I met up with this meetup group. They were so nice. They were so encouraging. And it was like a great 2 hours where like I could barely do anything, but they were just like, awesome, like you got on the wall. And I'm like, I know. And that's like all I cared about in that moment. And then I went the next week and they were just as nice. And then they invited me outdoors for the first time. And I was like, oh, sure. I'll go outdoors with strangers. Like, cool. Meeting people. And then, so like, I pretty much started gym climbing at the same time I started climbing outdoors. They invited me outdoors for the first time. And like, I top rope my first route outside for real, where I like kind of was a little bit older. I don't know, when you're 12, like, sure, you remember things, but, and I just got to the top. I'm like, cool, guess I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. And then it just proceeded from there. Like, I was very, really wanted to know, like, how to clean, how to lead, how to find things. And yeah, just took off.
And that's amazing when you mentioned like the community aspect of it, because climbing and any other extreme sports can be intimidating because you see all these people that look like demigods and super strong and doing all these things. And then you see yourself like, okay, I have one muscle, you know, it gives you that perception that, do I really fit in? Will I be able to do this? And that's part of the community that it's so welcoming, or sometimes it can be and it cannot be, but it tends to be welcoming and it drags you in. And that community aspect is something that you highlight a lot in your pictures as well, because, and you've mentioned it, we saw a video that you have on your webpage, and you say like, you know, I don't care mostly about the hardest climbs. I care more about like the culture and what's going on, have the most fun. What drew you into focusing on that? Your own experience or something in particular?
I think with rock climbing, it's got kind of two dichotomies in it, because climbing can be very self-focused, especially when you're projecting something. It's really, important for you to kind of push your own ideals a little bit. But I think the thing that we never talk about is how climbing is incredibly group and community-based. Like, I feel like we just don't ever talk about that, or we don't ever see it. We think of rock climbing as hard, remote, high, few people. But if you actually get down to the climbing community, like, that's a word that belongs together, and we never talk about the fact that sometimes what draws you into climbing is simply the community of it. Like, maybe you like the movement, maybe you like the height, maybe you like the air, but like, you know, air being whips. that. But like, you know, some people sheerly do it for the community that they find within it. And I think with other sports, it's just kind of not set up in that way.
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I find to be interesting. One is like when you say community, when you normally look at the rock climbing community, usually in like professional journalism and things like that, you see a professional climber doing things that most of us can never do. But in reality, the climbing community includes everybody, from the person getting on the rock for the very first time to that person, I don't know, shredding something that is unimaginable to everybody else. But you've really found a niche in capitalizing people coming in. I was kind of thinking about this difference. When we first start rock climbing, it's kind of about chasing fun. And sometimes along the way, it turns into chasing grades. And we start to miss out on some of the really important stuff, things like community. So I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about what you do to keep that fun aspect front and center in everything you do. I don't think I've seen you interact with a person on a video or a photograph where there's just not smiles all around, which is a compliment to you and the people that you surround yourself with, the community. And so, yeah, I guess short question long, what steps do you take to ensure that fun is center to the community?
I think it has a lot to do with your perception of climbing. And for me, as with most climbers, the more you do it, the more time you spend in it, the more, like, not for everybody, I'm not trying to speak, but like in general, there's this period of down, right? There's this period of down where it doesn't become fun anymore. And it's how people kind of perceive what to do about that. And, I myself has absolutely had that down period of like, I'm not excelling anymore. I'm not really liking this anymore. This is becoming more work. This is becoming hard. And like, I always say like really, really hold tight to that pristine state of mind when you first started climbing, where you didn't care because you didn't know. And you just had fun, and it was more community based, because when you start climbing, you're building muscle and you don't have it to start with, so you're not on the wall for very long and you can't do very much, so you end up hanging out more, right? And then that soon transitions as you build the muscle and the technique. You're like on the wall more, and then your goals change, right? And I think everybody has those goals change, and like some people plateau, but it's also this culture of like that's inherent in our culture, especially in society, that you have to keep excelling at things. And, I've just recently come around to the fact, that climbing wasn't fun for me for a very long time. And I'm like, why is this? Like, I'm losing muscle, I'm losing strength, I'm using, leading psyche ability. And then I just realized, I'm like, you know what? I don't really want to climb hard. That's just not for me. Like, when I thought about what rock climbing is for me, I'm like, I like to be outdoors. I like to get high on a wall. And I like the community, and I like the physical activity, but I don't like to be scared. I don't like to push the boundaries. I want to be home by 5 p.m. having dinner and then go to bed at 8. Like, that is what climbing is to me. And I think we always perpetuate kind of the athletic notion of climbing, which is like push, push, push. How far can you go in this space? And I think we just don't propel, it took me a while to come around to be like, yeah, what is rock climbing to me? And that doesn't mean hard, alpine, remote, scary, that means fun, people, you can still get movement on a 5-7. I mean, that's why I really gravitate towards long, moderate trad routes, because they're not that difficult. They still require a high level of difficulty. You still have a day of getting out there and being on the wall, but like, you don't want to poop your pants for most of the day. And so like, why can't I be that? And I think that's been a really big, the more I thought about it, that's been a really big constant in my life, that people in the work that I do and in my education are like, how far can you go? And you're like, well, why do I have to go farther when I'm like happy? I guess if people want to call it a plateau, I'm like, cool, I'm on this plateau. And like, people are like, well, get off the plateau. And I'm like, yeah, but I'm good here. I got a book, I got a beer, like, I don't understand why people constantly push you to continue on, right? Like, that's our society. You go to school, you get higher education, you get a job, and then in that job you keep going. But like, especially with jobs, my options were cool. Instead of, continuing to build things, which I'm really good at, like creatively and technically, now I'm moving to a computer and managing people, which I'm not so good at. And so it's like, why is that the only way to excel? And since that, it's been a factor in my life, and I'm like, wow, why does this keep happening where people are just pushing you forward when maybe you don't want to, maybe you're not ready, maybe that's not for you. And so, I don't know, maybe I'm just trying to perpetuate that. I'm like, rock climbing can be fun. You can succeed 98% of the time. Like, you're maybe not pushing the boundary of climbing, but like, that's definitely not what I want to do with my life. People who climb at an elite level in climbing, and I know a lot of them, work really, really hard to do so. I see the training, I see, the meal prep, and like how to live as cheaply as possible. And that really works for them. But like, I don't want to spend my time training. I want to spend my time editing photos. And so, my thought process is, I'm like, cool, I don't need to climb at elite level. I really love climbing easy, moderate stuff that I know that I can achieve.
I can't relate. I mean, you're talking and I feel teary-eyed. That's a constant. I always get teary-eyed in our sessions most of the time, because it's easy to relate to the people that you're talking to. And I cannot agree with you more. And I feel myself represented in you as well. So it's great to have a voice like you out there, and you being so outspoken, because that happens to me too. There was a moment where I was climbing super hard, and I would go every single day. I have a little one, so I would go early in the morning and I would make all the sacrifices. And then one day I was like, I don't feel like doing this anymore. I just don't feel
And I think people don't realize your life changes, and it's okay to move on to something else. I think that's the hardest part. When I my climbing just started to like plummet, I really had to ask myself, like, what is my life without climbing? Could I be okay with it? But climbing is so deep in people, right? It changed my life. It taught me incredible life lessons. Like, it's brought me to beautiful places, and it's such a big part of me. And to like leave it behind, you're just like, whoo, right? But like, I'm not leaving it behind. I'm just doing something. I'm incorporating it into my life now, which I'm not regretful of anything that I did. I'm just trying to transition climbing into my life as it is now. And it's okay to do that. It's okay to leave climbing behind, and do something else. My grandma Catherine takes up like a craft every few years, and she gets like really into it, and then like a few years later she just moves on, and she's just she did weaving for a really long time, and now she's on to quilting, and like she never feels bad about leaving one thing behind to do something else. That doesn't not make her a quilter or weaver. She's just focusing her time into something new, and like, that's not wrong at any point of your life, because your life is not a straight line, right? Things happen, you develop, and especially as a woman, like, you can absolutely, form a career or a child, and your life can change with that. And it might be different, but it's not like you have to leave climbing completely, but it's also not like you have to take it with you. It's okay to be like, my life is now my child, and I'm like loving that right now. And then maybe when they get a little bit older and I have more time, I'll find climbing again. But like, it's just that sense of loss when we move on to something different. And I think we need to be okay with that loss. Or like, if you're not okay with it, like, dude, figure out how to make climbing in your life. It's like, but it's like, it's okay to give up climbing as much as it is deep and really ingrained in us and very important to us. Just because you have left climbing because you've moved on to something different in your life does not make you a climber anymore.
And my question now is, you mentioned something that, okay, there's nothing wrong with living climbing, but for example, with you said, I loved it so much that I had to find a different way to still have it in my life. How long did that transition take for you, saying, okay, I don't want to climb anymore, but I feel like taking pictures?
3 years. It's taken me about 3 years.
There's hope in
like plummeting to climbing to have this slightly positive, different outlook. I think when people think of climbing, they only think of one mindset, right? We need to excel. We need to do these things. We need to do our projects. We have to move on. And I'm just like, I completely respect that. But why can't climbing also be different? I find, especially in Vegas, we have like a rad weekend warrior crew who's just like doing their thing. And then they like go climb moderates together on the weekends for like 4 hours because that's when they have time. And they're climbers. They love it. And I'm just like, you know, I don't understand why we only heavily perpetuate one mentality. You have to van life. You have to figure out how to live cheaply to do these things. And I'm just like, dude, I like a toilet. You know, like, I know that's like crazy and like first world problems, but like, I like to wake up and like take a shit right next to me. You know, it's like, we need to show that there are different ways to be a climber and to still achieve what you want into your life, but like not have to leave climbing in the dust, but also not feel obligated to feel bad about something that maybe you don't want to achieve anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. Gaia talked a little bit about Irene's Instagram, Ladylockoff. It's one of the most, not even one of the most, of all the Instagram people we follow, it's the best. If you want to feel good about yourself,
thank you.
Irene is here for you. I look forward to the times where she just comes up with maybe an underrepresented group or type of person or even idea. This is a person who's incredibly busy, doing lots of different things, but she takes time out to call people out individually, people that she's never met, where she'll scroll through their Instagrams and evaluate their photos or ask people to give her an example of somebody that maybe uplifts them. It's something that you need to do. I think it probably is, at least for me, the best Instagram there is. But what I wanted to say, one, is you should be following her if you're not already. But her photos are really, really, really good. In addition to her ability to sort of, and she's too humble to probably admit this, but really start movements and start conversations that are important to a lot of different people. She's really talented. And sometimes when you're talented as Irene, people tend to take your work. Now, there's this one particular photo of somebody called Trad Princess who's covered head to toe in like a dress of cams. And the question that I kind of want to ask about this is, I see that photo pop up all the time on all these overnight Instagram accounts trying to bring people in for sales or whatever reason. And I'm curious how that makes you feel when you see your work being taken and distributed by people without your permission.
I mean, that is like just a casualty of the internet. I mean, so in the beginning, I didn't consider myself a photographer. And so I just put whatever up online and like I did my thing and I didn't know about it. I think it's a difficult situation. And now as a photographer, what I struggle with is posting things and then keeping things, because I hate sitting on photographs. For me, my idea is that photographs are meant to be seen, and if you're keeping them all on your hard drive, what is the point of that? Now, the point of that technically is business, right? Now, it's taken me 4 years, but now I call myself a professional, and I think for a lot of women, that's like a confidence thing, especially, you know, because you don't want to be egotistical and you question yourself all the time, but like I am being confident and being like, yeah, I'm good. And I'm happy that I'm good and I produce good work. That's a huge, that's a huge step, but say that to yourself. When people, so the thought process is for me is that when you put something online, if you're not okay with people taking it, don't put it on there. Because once it's on the internet, like it is on the internet. And so, perhaps I definitely was in a phase where I didn't know, didn't care. And now I'm much more particular with what I share on there. Because people, I'm sure we all know, like the climbing bot accounts are like plethora. So if you don't know about this, people start climbing accounts, build a huge following to sell it to somebody else because then they already have that following, and that's a way that they do that. So pretty much there's another climbing account that just popped up that's literally probably reposting every photo that I currently post, and it's just like a second account. There are ways to do that, but it's that struggle between what's worth my time and what is like, I can't go after every single person, write a report for every single account. So I'm just more judicious about what I choose to put up there. And for me, like, for me, as long as I'm tagged as the person who took the photo, go for it. You know, number one, you're crediting me. Number two, it's just good for me in general. It spreads things around. I absolutely know. But right, I also use that mentality to flip it the other way, because I know that people will take my stuff. And if it's a good enough photo, it will circulate. So for me, I'm like, how do we get people who are representative of the actual climbing community? You know, I'm going to take that same photo with a person of color or somebody who is queer, and then that will rotate around the internet, so at least when people are scrolling to their feed, they see something different. They see somebody who looks like them, you know? And so, like, it's kind of, you turn it around, and it's like, well, if it's gonna do that, I might as well focus on people that we don't see. So, like, as much as it's a detriment, you can also use it as a positive. And, like, for me, I am always happy to give away work that will show somebody that they belong here. That's super important, because I know, like, when you scroll through your, like, not through the feed, through the people you follow, but when you scroll through that discovery tab, like, it can get really generic really quick, right? We kind of know what the world likes, what the world thinks is a beauty. And it's like, cool, well, I have this platform now where I can, like, kind of, you know, try to, like, infuse something a little bit different in there. And that's really important to me. So I, like, definitely, what you see on my Instagram is, like, it's hard because it's not always my best work, and that's really frustrating. It's like a combination, because my best work is stuff that I don't think I can sell anyways, because it's more fun and happy, and that's what means more to me when I go out with people that I really connect with. And so, like, it's a good place for photographs to go, right? Like, probably can't make any money off them, but, like, you know, here they are in a different place where they can live. And then, like, you know, your best work, it sucks to not be able to share, especially, you know, when you do something cool and you just want other people to think it's cool too. But, like, you gotta sit on those for a while, because that's kind of just how the business goes.
And based on how the business goes, I was taking a Dimichin master class, the photography class, and the master class, I think that's the name of the company, or at least the app. And in one of the episodes, he's saying, look, sometimes you're working for National Geographic and you go out on an expedition, take so many pictures, and then when you come back, they're like, I like 3 of the 10,000 pictures that you took, because most of them were not the greatest angle, or maybe this was not the like movement that we wanted to see, etc. Now you're saying that sometimes you take pictures that are so great, but you don't know what to do with them because they're focused mostly on the fun. So whenever you decide, okay, I want to sell my work, I want to reach out to different companies, what's your pitch to say, like, look, sometimes I don't shoot the hardest climbs, but I can shoot the culture and things that are completely different. How do you pitch your work?
I think that's really hard, because companies don't want that. I mean, it's like cut and dry. Magazines, editorial, they don't want artistically based photos in general. They need, like, a few here and there, but they already have people that they know and reach out to who do that. And so, like, your kind of cold call will probably just go nowhere. Also, those people are very busy. If you don't know about the editorial world, it is like, it's like, you think like a huge magazine is like run by, like, you know, it's like an office, like the New York Times, and literally it's like 2 people, you know? So those, like, it's not that they want to ignore you, it's that they literally just don't have the time anymore to be like, don't know you, it's not worth it, you know? Unless you can, like, show them something, like, super incredible, right? But, like, for me, it took me a while to realize that the editorial world maybe is not for me, right? Athlete photos are not for me. Like, what I do best is show people how fun rock climbing is. And, like, sure, I can do editorial. I think I've proven that a lot, and that's why I get hired a lot. But that's not my favorite work, you know? Doing editorial, it's like, it's a whole different thing. You gotta, like, wait for the light. You gotta, like, get up really early. And, you know, like, it's gotta be, like, this kind of perfection situation. But, like, especially when you have, like, an Instagram, it's like your own magazine, you know? This is what my climbing world is. And, like, hopefully people relate to it. And, like, those are shots that, like, people really don't want anyways. But, like, what do you do with them? Do you keep them to yourself? Which is fine. You know, I always say, like, you're the photographer. Do it with whatever you want with your artwork. Just know if it goes online, again, you are putting it into the world. Now, technically there are copyright laws. People are not just allowed to take your work, but like, let's be honest, it's gonna happen. And so if you're not cool with that, it's time to like pull it off. Anyways, but like, right, for me, I found that like, I just know what I do really well. And there are things that like, I'm more about relatability, and like, I don't follow the pros around, because in the beginning, like, I didn't know any pros, right? I shot what I knew best. And, you know, anybody who is a photographer, do what you know. That will be your best work, is the work that is closest connected to you, because you know it really, really well. And so that's what I immediately started doing. And that's what I just found that I was good at, is like having a happy, fun day. Number one, you're not like stressed out. People aren't stressed out, but it also makes you more creative, because you're in the situation that you're not looking for these perfection items, like perfect lighting or, you know, but like, for me, like, I'm just a creative person. I'm like, cool, you can either let this problem of like crappy light get to you, or you can learn how to work around it, right? And so like, that's what's fun about it. It's like, you can get really down on your crappy situation, or you can be like, cool, this is a crappy situation, what can I do with it that will make it better? And then, like, you know, the photos get really artsy when that happens, but like, right, it's just different, it's creative, it's like a challenge, it's like a problem, it's like a puzzle, and like, sometimes you can get really cool things out of that, or sometimes you're just like, well, I'm just gonna wait till sunset, because I know that's gonna be better, and so I'm just gonna take a nap, wake me up at 5. You know.
So I was talking a little bit about how you use your social platforms to, I don't know, help other people out. One thing that's kind of frustrating to me within climbing is this yeah but culture, where somebody's like, oh, I sent my first 510, and then somebody else is there to say, yeah, but it was on top rope. And I think it was sometime last year, Sasha and Angela and Savannah did this ridiculous climb out on an island in Africa, and it was just torrid, rain all the time, and they were documenting, and it was really fun to sort of keep up with. And then they had a little opening in the weather, and they topped it out, and I was just amazed. I can't believe they do this. I can't believe that they've gone through all these things to finally make it. But right there on people's comments is, yeah, but it was more aid climbing than anything else. And so I was wondering what you've done, or what you can do to sort of help us overcome this whole notion of, yeah, but you could have done more.
Yeah, it's a lesson in empathy, right? It's a lesson in wanting to be open to other people's experiences. And I think that's something that it's not taught in school, you know, it's something that you have to learn along the way. And sometimes that way is very bumpy. And sorry, I'm trying to think of like key examples. So I am a person who hates statements like, just do it, right? Because that just goes along with like, be happy. Like, that's not great advice. So I like to give people like concrete things to do that are like steps, because like, just being like, oh, just be happy about it, just don't worry about it, like, that helps nobody. So, you know, things that you can do, and sometimes they're really little, and honestly, it's just a lot of self-reflection. Like, how did I act in that situation? Was I supportive? Like, do I actually care? What is my notion of climbing, right? And like, we are not often asked to be introspective of that, but more so, I think women and people of color and queer people are always asked to be introspective about themselves, whereas folks outside of that are maybe not. And so, right, it's figuring out what climbing is to you, and knowing that it will be different in somebody else. So like, climbing to me, right, is fun, it's outdoors, it's community based. And so it's showing other people that, and like kind of coming to the conclusions. It's hard. You're like in your bubble, and people are just like throwing things at it, right? And it's hard, right? Sometimes those things get through, and it's like, it's not the time. You know, you need to step back and be like, whew, that was not good. I did not feel good about that, right? But then I take the time to be like, why did that comment hurt me? Or like, you know, and then sometimes your bubble's really strong. You're like, bring it on. I love 5'7", not gonna waver. right? And so if you want to uplift others, figure out how you act around them, right? I realize when people are like, oh, like, you know, like, what did you get on today? Right? That's always a question we ask each other. And I'm just like, well, rather like what you got on, because that normally applies like, ooh, what did you climb? You know, how hard did you go? It's like, how was your day? How was your climb? Like, whatever, I don't care what your climb, right? Because that implies, I don't care what you climbed, I care how you felt about it. You know, did you have a great day climbing? Like, did you have stuff around top rope? Like, it's little things in your language that you can just show somebody else how to be positive about it. Really be like, oh, you know, how was your day? You know, it's so easy for us to be like, what'd you get on? Right? But like, think about what that implies behind it and what you actually mean behind it. And you know, as with the world, there are some people who are just not open to that, right? There are some people who don't realize that the things that they say really affect you, and it's hard to also tell them that. And it's like, cool. Those situations are always difficult. You're like, how do I step away? People are like, just stop hanging out with that person. But I'm like, if that person is your significant other and you actually care about that, that can be really difficult. But those conversations are really good because we all don't realize how we either come off to people or like what we say really affects them. Like when I'm so sorry, but like now when people start talking about climbing, especially like more elite folks, I just tend to like start to step away because like I'm just like, guys, I don't care. Like, where are the marshmallows? You know, like I just like it. I'm almost at the point where I'm getting like a little frustrated where like I love climbing. I guess I love talking about climbing, but like I don't want to spend my entire evening going up your climb with you that you did that day. I want to be like, cool, how did you feel about it? Like, what are your plans for the future? What's the name of your dog? You know? And it's just like, perhaps bring your mindset away from what that person climbs back to who that person is. Because I think that's more of an important step that you can find about how to actively support that person.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I bet you've encountered situations like those as well, because even though you're well known in that community as well, because you're involved with some of these figures, you still do photography that's out of the box. And right now we're being very bright about it and uplifting, but I'm pretty sure that sometimes you've encountered someone that's like, yeah, but Irene takes pictures they're great, but they're too artisty, or yeah, they're great, but have you ever encountered, or has there been a specific event related to that you were like, yep, I can recall that this happened and I handled it this way, or not?
Yeah, somebody, kind of in passing said like, yeah, Irene's, you know, she's really good at marketing. You know, she's not the best photographer, but she's really good at marketing. And I'm just like, huh. And I felt really bad about myself for about 15 minutes. And I thought about that. And then I was like, hold up, right? The way, when I get scared on a fixed line, the way that I like deal with my fear is I'm like, cool, let me go through top to bottom my system, right? I tied my knot. I made sure that those carabiners were locked. I like was part and present in the process of doing those things. My like harness is on. I'm looking down at it. My like gree carabiner is locked. My Jumar is locked. Like, I am not falling off of this line. So like, it's okay to be scared, but like, just know that like, unless you start like sawing through your rope, like nothing's going to happen. And so, right, apply that to this situation. Cool. Like, do I work professionally with big name companies? Yes. Right? Do I produce work that is being published in many magazines? Yes. Do people tell me online every week that something touched them? Yes. Am I proud of the work that I produce? Yes. So like, go F yourself, you know? Like, sure, that is your opinion and that's fine. But like, when I look at the details of my life, I literally was like, okay, so like, when do I call myself a professional? Like, when does that happen? And I'm like, well, you know, it's kind of time. Like, how far do you have to go? Do I have to wait till like I'm 50 till I feel it? And I think it's like, you're never really going to truly feel it. But when you look at like your resume of what you do, then that's all that matters. Like, cool. Like, it's hard to be like, how do I stay humble and stay like really focused on uplifting people, but also freaking uplift myself and be like, yeah, I'm bomb. Like, I know this. People tell me this. Why don't I believe them? You know? And so, like, my last year's resolution was to believe people when they told me good things about myself, right? Because especially as a female, like, you don't want to stand out too far. You don't want to do this, you know, right? And all this garbage. And you're just like, sometimes you just have to be an egotistical person and be like, yeah, I'm good. And then you have a really good friend who's like, hey, Irene,
you're good.
Take it down a little bit, you know, just a little bit. And you're like, you're really good at what you do, but like, come back in. Cool. All right, good. And so I think it's just like a confidence thing, you know, and you gotta work on it. It's not easy. It's really difficult. People will say garbage about you all the time. And right, it's so often that we have like one person who makes a terrible comment about us, and that's all we focus on. And I think, you know, I am a absolute Brene Brown disciple. If you don't know who she is, please go look her up. It's like, you know, I don't know, I'm in a time in my life where I'm like open to sort of self-helpy things. But, you know, she was like, of course these things hurt. You are human. It's not like, you know, people are like, oh, I don't care what people say about me. No, you are meant to care about what people say about you. It's just who you choose to listen to and who you choose to ignore, because people who don't have an investment in your emotional well-being don't have a damn opinion about what you should do or what you be. I always come back to like, am I happy? Am I, me, Irene, happy with the work that I am producing? And the answer is yeah, then my work is good because it's meaningful to me. I'm doing something with it, and I, you know, it looks good. And I'm just gonna, you know, I go with that. And so, you know, people will say crappy things to you all the time, but they're mostly faceless people who have no idea, you know, the people in your life who you should listen to are people who are like, hey, you're a great person, but you said this really crappy thing and we need to talk about it. Right? Because they're not people who are making you just feel bad about yourself. Like, nobody should question if you're a good person. If somebody's questioning you if you're a good person, then like, you probably really honestly shouldn't hang around them. There are absolutely people who can question when you say terrible things or when you screw up, because you know what, you're human and it's gonna happen. And those are the people that you are listening to. Like, you're a good person, but you said this really terrible thing and we just need to have a conversation about it. Right? And that's the same thing that you can do to support your friends and to support these things, to tell your climbing partner, like, hey, I love that you're self-focused and you have this thing, but this is not where I'm at, and I would really appreciate it if you didn't say X, Y, and Z just to me, you know? And those are the best people in your life. And those are the people that you should honestly listen to.
And well, talking about the greatest people in your life, and I think based on what we're going to mention, I'm pretty sure that you have a lot of people that are great in your life. We follow you on Instagram, of course. We've mentioned this several times, and we've seen that sometimes you do cleanups at Red Rocks where people take shits and you pick up the shit and you're like,
I'm very into the world of excretion.
When you mentioned that you like to take shits in toilet, I was like, yeah, she likes shit. So how did that come to be? One day you just decided and said, hey, group of friends, let's just go clean up shit at Red Rocks. How did that?
I think it's been ingrained into me, like, just early in my life to give back. You know, my dad is amazing and he volunteers his time in many endeavors, and he's always like, well, you know, if you're not feeling good, like, go volunteer time. And that is something in my 20s that I was just like, well, I don't want to do that, right? But like, now I'm like, okay, cool, like, I have the time and the means to do this, so like, what can I do? Like, I want to give back to a community, because like, let me tell you, like, these acts of like what you think is like selflessness, it's so selfish. Like, I love helping the NCC refill the wag bags because I get to like put on my like douchebag blue headphones and just like, it forces me out of the house to do something active, right? For like a little time, I get to like just, you know, like melt into my terrible pop music and like and it's like, I don't really do the wag bags, maybe because I don't think it's good. It's because I need like me time, right? And so, like, it's okay to do good things and volunteer your time because it really selfishly makes you feel really good about yourself. It's okay. That's why it's a little weird when, Access Fund approached me about being an advocate, because I'm just like, I don't know, I do these things because they make me feel really good, which makes me feel like I'm not doing them in a way that people think it's like really selfless. But I just wanted to give back to my community, and to be honest, like, the world has so many problems. Like, every time, I stopped using plastic bags, tried to really reduce my single-use plastic, and then apparently washing your clothes puts like microfibers into the ocean, right? Like, it never stops. It never stops. Your existence never stops, and that's the horrible part of privilege, right? Of realizing your own privilege in this world. So, for me, it was like, cool. If I do something at a local level, I can actually see the change in my community, rather than just like, okay, cool, I don't use plastic bags anymore, but pretty much that will never stop in this world, right? So, like, for me, I was like, cool, what can I do? And my local climber coalition, the Southern Nevada Climbers Coalition, was like, hey, honestly, we just need people to, like, go refill these WAG bags so people can constantly take them, because we just can't keep up. And I'm like, cool, I got it, right? I can do that. It's it's 2 hours of my time a week. But, like, that's time that I am outdoors and I get to listen to music and, like, right? So, like, these cleanups happen. We have so many awesome local coalitions that do these little projects, right? If you don't have money, that's cool, right? Volunteer your time. If you don't have time, but you have money, volunteer your money, It's like figuring out what you can do and just, like, contacting them. Like, there are so many things, like, Red Rock is a constant problem of graffiti and trail maintenance. And, like, sometimes you just need a body. And if you can be that body, give back just a little bit to the community that you're a part of, right? Like, I love being on a trail and, like, not noticing any dog poop. So I go out, whenever I'm out, on my way out, I'll just take out some dog poop with me, right? And it's just like, honestly, if 5 more people did that, like, just on Saturday and Sunday, there would be no dog poop out there. Right? And that's it. That's small. You can actually see those tiny little changes when you participate in your own community and try to do things that are, selfish, totally fine, but good.
We thought of you during the month of February. We did something called the Plastic Cap Challenge. So what we do is try to reduce our plastic consumption. And what we say is that, okay, for every plastic product that we buy, we're going to tax ourselves $1. And then at the end of the month, $1. Yeah. And then at the end of the month, we just donated, and we did a cleanup activity throughout that month. And I thought of you. I was like, look, I'm Ladylockoff.
Yeah.
Because there was a bag of poop just thrown there in the trail. And I'm like, that makes no sense. If you're going to poop, please don't put it in a bag, because the bag's not going to decompose. You know what I mean? So I was like, I'll just grab it. But I was walking with my bag of poop. I was like, look, I have poop.
So motivational.
But it is very important, and you don't notice it. For example, we climb at Raymer's Ranch in Texas, and it's not as... Of course, people go, but it's not as popular as, let's say, Red Rock, that a lot of people go. So, of course, you're going to have more human impact in those areas. And it's very important to do and be aware. And you take advantage of that platform that you have to create that awareness and just give back to the community.
I mean, if you're going to be online, you might as well do good things. And, like, it feels sometimes really like it feels weird sometimes to post those things. Like I'm bragging about, like, picking up poop. But I was like, right, that sucks. And it may come off that way. But, like, if you show respect for the place that you love, that is more likely to show people around you to also do that, right? Like, since I've been posting, like, taking out dog poop, like, so many people are like, oh yeah, I, like, picked one up yesterday, right? Like, how is that bad? Like, if that's bragging, but it actually produces change, what is wrong with that? Like, I don't see a problem with spreading that around. And, like, honestly, it's just the people who see you on the trail coming out. Like, I don't have a dog, but I pick up a lot of dog poop. I guess I'm, like, preemptively doing it. So when I have a dog, I'm like, oh, I don't know, the poop in the middle. I've, like, cleaned up, I'm just, like, building the karma before I get it. But, like, when you show that you respect your crag by just, like, doing a little micro trash pickup, like, people will see that, and maybe they won't say anything to you, but it will be with them, and that will hopefully, right, your little change, your respect will then travel to somebody else who has respect, you know? And it's just like, I don't care if it's one person. Like, we got one more person picking up dog poop. That's amazing. Like, I'll take it because in my area, that's good, right? And so, you know, so many people thank you on the trail as you're coming off, and I, like, never know what to say to them because I'm, like, half, like, angry.
That's
and, like,
so
well,
great.
you didn't pick up that bag of poop. You litter past it, right? But, like, it's that thing being like, you know what? If I show that I'm doing something good, maybe that will encourage somebody to do it as well. So like you gotta put the anger aside. It's really hard sometimes, but like, you know, the more you do that, you know, the result is much better in the end. I completely, especially in a social online environment, you cannot educate through hate, shame, and negativity. And so that's the hardest part, to not come at somebody like, right? You got to put that aside and like, what is the educational part of this that perhaps I can enlighten you on? And let me tell you, if you're not ready to participate in that, don't do it. Just stay off the line. Stay off comments. It's not worth your emotional turmoil and time to go do something to educate somebody who 0% wants to be educated, right? Like, hash it out in the DMs where it can be private, where maybe that situation is a little bit better, and have just slightly more, perhaps, compassion for that person, and it gets farther, right? But I'm not lying, that's a hard thing to do. Sometimes you are just mad, but you really want to tell somebody why, but like, right, that doesn't always produce the most educational results.
No, 100%. And you see that when you talk about or post things that you've done, all of them are about how much fun I've never seen somebody look like they're having so much fun scrubbing graffiti off of rocks. You know what I mean? You've never made it look like you're suffering.
So when you're like slightly a perfectionist, it's like the perfect thing, right? Because it's like coming off and you want to make it look really good. So if you're a perfectionist, go volunteer to scrub graffiti, because let me tell you, it'll look beautiful by the time you're done. Like, use your skills for positive, you know, but just like, you know, you talk a lot about me having fun, and I just want to say that like social media is a filter for your life. No matter who you are, you can try to be as authentic as you want to be, but you will never be an authentic person on a photograph platform, right? It's edited, it's curated, and just, you know, I am a uplifted person, but like, I have my struggles too. But right, my barrier stops. I have a barrier that I had to put up, because I'm like, look, if I'm going through some stuff, it is not for the public to know, and I do not have to share that. Maybe once I'm through my experience, I'll be happy to share that, because it's important that we share that, like, you know, some of us have depression or we have issues that we need to work out. And for me, that's like, I'm just like, it's a barrier for me, right? Because I'm just like, look, this is not for the public to know, and it's none of their business. And that is an absolutely fine barrier to put up. So like, you know, I think some of my worst times I felt kind of two-faced, where I was like putting out maybe an inspirational message because it was uplifting me, but people took it as what I was saying. And I think that's the hardest part of social media, is like, how do I be authentic in this space? Because if I was, you would be so bored. I mean, I'm sitting on the couch doing a puzzle on Saturday night. Like, that's not really compelling stuff for you to watch, you know? And so I just want to put it out there that like, social media is awesome. We have this beautiful platform. You should be yourself as much as you can be, but just also know that it is a filter of somebody's life.
Normally towards the end, we ask our interviewees if there's anything, any project they're working on, or anything they would like to plug in.
People always ask me this, and I always forget to actually prepare something. You know, get offline and go lead your life. Don't ever feel bad about being off of it for a little time, because you're too busy. If you are too busy to be on social media, that is not a bad thing. That's a fine thing. And I think we're all run by this like need to keep up and do all these things, but like, it's really good. During my wag bag runs, I turn off my phone. And it's probably the only time that I actually turn off my phone all week. But I really enjoy that space and time, you know, like 2 hours, nothing can happen in 2 hours. You know, my family is on the other side of the country. So even if something happened within the first 10 minutes, there is pretty much nothing I can do about it within a 2-hour time period. So yeah, get off your phone and live your life, and don't ever feel bad about being like, oh, I haven't been on this for a while. It's cool. Live your life. That's what you're doing. It's fine.
Oh, you want to say anything else?
Just thank you so much. Maybe we can
Thank you.
come back and talk to you again sometime. We have so many more questions. You're so
Let's
motivational.
do it.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so
Irene.
much.
My name is Irene Yee, also known online as Ladylockoff, and my pronouns are she, her.